favorite trail locally, maybe it's in another part of the country or world, but think about why that is your favorite, and we would love to hear from you about your ideas. So as you're typing those answers into the chat, I just want to go over a few basic logistics. First of all, if you have a question for any of our speakers tonight, you can type those into the question and answer box. So the chat is more just kind of for comments, and the Q&A is really where you want to put those questions that you're asking of the speakers. If we don't have time to get all of those questions answered tonight, I will be sharing those with our speakers, so there will be an opportunity for them to see all of the questions, even if we don't have time to answer all of them. And we're going to share a lot of information tonight. Don't feel like you need to write everything down. If you're watching this webinar, that means that you registered for it, or somebody that you're watching it with is registered for it. You will receive an email tomorrow afternoon. It will include a link to a recording of this webinar. It's also going to include all of the links that were shared here. So again, please enjoy the presentation and don't feel like you need to write everything down. So I'm Meg Fensel. I'm the Director of Engagement and Impact at Sustain Charlotte. Behind the scenes, we have Alina Shepard, Eric Zaverl, and Tariq Kiley, who are helping with logistics. I want to thank them as well. Sustain Charlotte is an organization that advocates for sustainable land use and transportation choices. And I always like to share at our events ways that you can support events like this. And one of the best ways to do that is by becoming a member of Sustain Charlotte. So you can join at sustaincharlotte.org/member. And there are a lot of great benefits, not only this amazing t-shirt, but a lot of other ways that you can enjoy being part of our member network. Also, if you work for a company, you can invite them to become a Sustain Charlotte partner. We also have a great employee match giving program that can help to leverage the funds that you would invest through your company. I also want to invite you to submit a nomination for our upcoming 10th annual Charlotte Sustainability Awards that we'll be hosting on Earth Day, which is Friday, April 22nd. So we are looking for individuals, small and large businesses, nonprofits, building projects, government agencies and departments that are really helping to advance sustainability in the Charlotte region. There is also a Recycling Excellence Award that is sponsored by Mecklenburg County, and we're accepting nominations for that as well. So you can learn more about that at sustaincharlotte.org/awards. And again, that will be in your follow-up email tomorrow, so you don't need to write that down, but please do submit a nomination and recognize someone. So we are really excited tonight to announce that we're launching an initiative to highlight the many benefits of Greenways and to amplify the voices of Mecklenburg County residents and organizations as we advocate for equitable and expedited construction of our county Greenway network. And Mecklenburg County Park and Rec Commission members, Sustain Charlotte, Partners for Parks, and the Carolina Thread Trail, so all organizations that you will hear from tonight, are working together to create and advance this initiative. And each of our organizations is committed to sustainable urban development, improved and equitable access to greenways, and public open space for all people. So you may be wondering why is now the time for this initiative? So we have 5 short reasons for you before we get into our presentation from Bert Lynn from Park and Rec. So first of all, our Greenway network has not grown fast enough to keep up with the needs of our current residents. So residents have consistently shown a desire for more greenways, but our past goals for growing that network have not been fully met, and we're falling behind. Now is also the time to buy land for future greenways. As a result of continued population growth and land development, the available land for greenways is shrinking, and the land that is there is becoming more expensive. So it's really critical for Mecklenburg County to purchase land for future greenways while it's still available and less expensive. Also, financial conditions are in our favor. Mecklenburg County has an excess budget of $400 million, and at the state level, there's a $6 billion budget excess. And at the same time, bond interest rates are low. And this combination of available funds and low interest rates creates favorable conditions to act on building our greenway system now. Investment decisions are being made now. So capitalizing on excess general funds requires strategic planning during the budgeting process, which is currently taking place for the next several years. So the decisions that we make now will really impact the growth of our greenways for the coming years. And finally, our community's mobility and sustainability depends on us taking action. Investing in greenways really enhances not just accessibility for more residents, but also our mental and physical health, low cost and carbon-free transportation choices, those active transportation choices, walking and biking, sustainable development, opportunities for environmental tourism, and increased property values and tax base. And before we get into the program, I want to remind you of the power that we can have as a community when we unite our voices and call for change, when we call for investment in parks and greenways. So back in 2017, over 2,000 of you signed our petition calling on the Mecklenburg County Commissioners to fully fund the park and recreation projects that voters had approved bonds for in 2008. And the result of our action was full funding for all 13 of the remaining 2008 bond projects at a cost of $49 million. So you definitely can make a difference by getting involved. And we hope to not only educate, but also to inspire you tonight. We have some excellent speakers lined up for you to be educated and inspired. So first will be Bert Lynn from the Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation, followed by Beth Povey from Partners for Parks, Raul Galvan from Carolina Thread Trail, and Paul Freestone, who is a Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Commission member. So at this point, I will turn the presentation over to Bert Lynn, who will talk to us about the MEC Playbook, the Greenway Master Plan, and some of the work that is being done by the staff at Park and Rec. And I do want to point out that Bert is a staff member of Mecklenburg County Park and Rec. So they plan and determine how to build these projects and get them built. And we, as advocacy organizations, can support them. So I just always like to distinguish between county staff and the groups that are working to advocate. So think about, as Bert is giving his presentation, how we can get involved in helping to make this happen and to happen faster.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Meg. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about Mecklenburg County's Greenway system. As Meg said, my name is Bert Lynn. I'm the Capital Planning Division Director for Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation. And I'm joined tonight by Katie Lloyd, Senior Planner with Park and Recreation as well. If you have questions as I present, feel free to add those in the chat, and Katie will be responding to some of those. And then I think we have some time at the end of the presentation to talk a little bit about, or to answer some questions that you may have. So I wanted to take some time this afternoon to provide a broad overview of our Greenway system, share the types of infrastructure found on our typical Greenway trail, discuss how we prioritize our Greenway projects for funding and development, and share, kind of look forward and share some of the highest ranked Greenway projects that we'll be working on, hopefully, in the next 10 years or so. Next slide, please. So from a high level, greenways are vegetated buffers along creeks and streams that protect water quality, reduce impacts of flooding, and provide habitat for wildlife. We like to think of them as linear parks. Our Greenway trails provide a place for recreation and fitness, and a means of safe bike and pedestrian transportation. Beyond the direct recreation and transportation benefits, greenways promote diversity and healthy lifestyles, improve the quality of life in the communities where they're located, and provide a very good return on their investment. Next slide. So greenways were first recommended as part of the very first Park and Recreation Master Plan that was done by the city at the time in 1966. But it wasn't until the late 70s when McAlpine Creek Greenway, our first greenway, was developed. A greenway specific master plan was completed in 1980, but it was a little bit slow to catch on. The late 70s through the 80s and 90s, we built only about 10 miles of greenway trail. Over the last 20 years, greenway trails have been the most requested park and recreation amenity that we offer. The demand has seen our system grow to a total of 61 miles of trail today. Our updated Greenway Master Plan includes a total of 344 miles of greenway trails, with an additional 280 miles of urban trails that will make connections from one stream corridor to another over land and along roads. Next slide, please. The map here shows the general locations of our current funded Greenway projects. Between the county and other municipal agencies, we have a total of 12.4 miles of greenways under construction right now, and another 23 miles of greenway trails in design, permitting, or bidding. So if you add everything up that's got funding right now, that's a current total of 107 miles that will be completed in the coming years. So only about a third, or a little less than a third, of our total system. Some of the recently completed or soon to be completed sections of Greenway trails include a connection of Torrance Creek Greenway and McDowell Creek Greenway up in Huntersville. The town of Cornelius recently wrapped up the northernmost section of McDowell Creek Greenway from Westmoreland Road to Catawba Avenue. Little Sugar Creek Greenway, which will be featured, I think, next month in Sustain Charlotte's program from 485 to Polk in Pineville, is completed, and the final section down to the state line is under construction right now. The extension of Little Sugar Creek Greenway as part of the Cross Charlotte Trail project from Cordelia Park to Brevard will be completed very soon, and the highly anticipated section of Greenway between Brandywine and Tyvola Roads, connecting two long sections of existing trails, will be completed later this year. Next slide, please. So much of our Greenway system is stream-based. So it's located in floodplains, which are dynamic areas prone to floods where we find poor soils typically. Our Greenway infrastructure is designed and constructed to withstand these conditions for many years. So I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with our Greenways, but if you aren't, our Greenway trails are paved trails, typically 10 to 12 feet wide, paved with either asphalt or concrete to withstand the environment within the floodplain. Where possible, we like to provide grade separated crossings from roadways, and typically we do that using existing bridges or culverts under roadways. All of our projects include wayfinding signage for orientation, to provide distance along the trails, and for to share trail etiquette. Next slide, please. Our major stream crossings are typically made with large pre-manufactured steel bridges with concrete decks that can withstand loads of light equipment up to very heavy equipment. Smaller crossings, we typically use boardwalks. We also use boardwalks if we have a deeper channel that we need to cross and we need handrails there, through wetland areas, along areas of steep cross slopes, and in floodplains where we can't necessarily go in and do lots of earth fill. And then we use swale bridges or low water crossings that match the width of the trail for kind of minor crossings and ditches and things of that nature. Next slide. Over the past 2 years, Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation developed MEC Playbook, our new park and recreation master plan. If you're interested in getting to that, I think we've got a link here, and then at the last slide, we've got a link to that plan as well if you're interested in downloading a copy of that. As part of that process, we conducted community engagement, steering committee and stakeholder meetings, and completed an inventory and assessment of every park, Greenway trail, nature preserve, and recreation facility in our system. MEC Playbook uses the 4 guiding principles of commit to equity, evolve and grow, tell more stories, and move beyond boundaries to develop comprehensive system-wide recommendations to enhance and improve how we serve the residents of Mecklenburg County. Next slide, please. The principles, goals, and strategies included in MEC Playbook will be applied to key aspects of what we do at Park and Recreation. Acquiring land to fill gaps in park access, account for growth, and protect natural resources. Staffing to ensure we provide a well-rounded range of programs and maintain our facilities at a high level. and engagement to actively involve residents in all aspects of the services that we provide. More applicable to growing our greenway trails are reinvestment in our existing greenways to make sure that they're passable and safe, and investments in new trails. Next slide, please. MEC Playbook aligns recommendations for future capital projects by facility types as shown here. We further separated future projects into reinvestments in existing facilities and investments in new facilities. Beyond our capital investments, there are other areas where Park and Recreation will need to improve to ensure we can keep pace with the county's growth. Staffing to maintain our facilities, land for future parks and greenways, and programming to meet our residents' needs. Next slide. Future projects are included in one of 3 tiers, as shown here. Tier 1 projects will be recommended first for funding and construction. We refined and prioritized lists included in MEC Playbook, and these lists will easily translate into recommendations for future funding, be it through our next capital improvement plan or other available funding. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about growing our greenways, shall we? Greenway trails continue to be the most requested facility in our system. We prioritize future greenway investments that connect to existing trails, require acquisition of fewer properties, and serve areas where access to public open space is limited. The updated Greenway Master Plan includes a total of 344 miles and was adopted by the Board of County Commissioners in December of 2021. And this master plan is also going to be available through a link we have in the final slide here. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the main criteria that we use when ranking future greenway projects. So connectivity is the first. Projects that extend existing greenway trails or fill gaps between 2 existing trails are high priority. And this is criteria that was added to some previous scoring models through the input from our Greenway Advisory Council. The second is land needs. Land ownership and easements are necessary for our project, but often take quite a bit of time to acquire. And we'll talk about this in a little more detail shortly. Next is equity. So through MEC Playbook, we've identified areas of the county where we'll focus investments in many of our new facilities. We call these areas priority communities, which are areas of higher than average youth and senior populations, greater numbers of renters, and are areas that have higher rates of poverty and greater numbers of residents of color. We've also identified areas within the county where we'll focus land acquisition efforts for all types of facilities. And finally, partnerships. We provide priority to projects that include some type of meaningful partnership. These projects could include projects that are co-funded with other municipalities or projects that are partially funded using state or federal grants. Next slide. So in MEC Playbook, we've identified and highlighted 30 Tier 1 projects that equal just over 50 miles of new greenway trails. Our aim is to recommend funding for these projects in our next capital improvement plan. And if approved, funding for these projects would begin being available for design and construction in July of 2023. Instead of painfully walking through each one of these projects, we thought it made a little bit more sense to talk through some of the themes that run across the projects shown in Tier 1. So if you go to the next slide, the majority of our high-ranking projects are projects that are expansions of existing greenway trails. In the northern part of the county, McDowell Creek Greenway will extend south, connecting into Alton Nature Preserve. Long Creek Greenway will continue its march towards the Catawba River, connecting further downstream to Shuffletown Park. McIntyre Creek Greenway, the first section of which is currently in design within and around Hornets Nest Park, will extend west to Possum Walk Nature Preserve, Oak Hills Park, and connect into Long Creek Greenway. Just east of Uptown, Campbell Creek Greenway will extend north to Campbell Creek Park and connect into the soon-to-be-developed former Eastland Mall site. On the south side of the county, extensions of Sugar Creek Greenway to the south, 4 Mile Creek Greenway to the east, and at the very bottom of the county, one of our Park and Recreation Commissioner's favorite greenway, 6 Mile Creek Greenway, will be extended to the east. Next slide, please. Some of our high priority projects will fill gaps between existing trails. These connections will have a big impact on connectivity within the county. Irvins Creek Greenway in Matthews will connect the first phase of that project, which is currently under construction, through to McAlpine Creek Park and McAlpine Creek Greenway. This connection will be made under Highway 74, providing a safe bike ped connection across that corridor. 3 shorter sections of Irwin and Stewart Creek Greenways will link those separated sections of trail, then extend those trails both north and south from where they currently are. Next slide, please. Some of our high priority projects include new greenway corridors. Steel Creek Greenway in the southwest part of the county will link several existing schools to existing and future development. Back Creek Greenway, along one of the tributaries of Back Creek, will link several large existing communities to a piece of property that is undeveloped currently, but we refer to it as Back Creek Park. It's a 124-acre piece of property that we've done some high-level master planning on over the last couple of years, and we also hope to have funded in the next CIP. South Prong Clark Creek Greenway in Huntersville will improve an existing hiking trail that winds through another large existing community there. Park and Recreation is partnering with the town of Huntersville on this project, with the town funding design and the county funding the construction of the project. Next slide. Expanding on partnerships, Park and Recreation works with a number of agencies and in some cases private developers to work towards building out our greenway system. I just mentioned our partnership with the town of Huntersville, which also includes the extension of McDowell Creek Greenway toward Alton Nature Preserve. The private developer overseeing the improvements and expansions of Ballantyne Corporate Park will soon be constructing an access trail from that area across the creek to McAlpine Creek Greenway. One of our largest partners is the City of Charlotte. The Cross Charlotte Trail overlaps with several greenways included within our county master plan. 3 high priority segments of greenway, 1 on Toby Creek and 2 on Mallard Creek, are currently funded segments of the Cross Charlotte Trail. Once those segments are completed, Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation will take over maintenance and operations of those facilities. Next slide, please. So we know that we have a lot of work to do to build out our greenway system. Park and Recreation staff will be evaluating each of the higher ranking projects in terms of feasibility regarding land acquisition, permitting, and budget. Each element can have significant impact on the design process and construction schedule. Permitting is a constant for our projects. And just to give you a sense of what we deal with from a permitting standpoint, our typical greenway projects require a floodplain development permit, a flood model to ensure our project doesn't impact the flood elevation, water quality review by the state, sediment and erosion control permits, encroachment agreements, building permits, accessibility reviews, and in the case of projects including wetlands, a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. And that sounds very daunting, and it is in some cases, but our project managers at our partner agency in Mecklenburg County, Asset and Facility Management, are well versed in these requirements. More funding for greenway trails is a great way to increase completion of our new trails. However, we've got some more nuanced problems that we deal with on a regular basis, one of which is a shortage of contractors who typically bid on our greenway projects. Currently, this requires us to stagger bid advertisements as to not overwhelm our contractors, and in some cases can lead to volatility in the bidding market. Volatility is also affected by the price of some of the main building materials that we use to build our greenways: oil and petroleum products for asphalt and fuel, concrete, and steel being those primary building materials. Land acquisition takes a tremendous amount of work to complete, much of which is due to the linear nature of greenway trails. Next slide, please. Our projects typically touch numerous properties. Some of these properties are owned by individuals, family trusts, and homeowners associations. Land acquisition efforts over the next 10 years will focus on filling gaps in priority communities, shown here in orange, in areas of the county with limited or no nearby access to public open space, and along Tier 1 greenway corridors. This year's county budget provided a large increase for land acquisition. This additional budget has allowed us to begin to fulfill our plan to acquire land for more parks and greenway trails. But we're met with other challenges, which include rising land costs, scarcity of land in some areas of the county, and a red hot development market here in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. Next slide, please. Now that MEC Playbook has been endorsed and the new Greenway Master Plan adopted, we at Park and Rec will begin to turn our attention toward developing our recommendations for the next 5-year capital improvement plan. In the coming months, we'll begin to engage with county residents online and in person to provide input on how we want to grow and improve our greenway trail system and other park and recreation facilities over the next 5 years. And the last slide here is a link to our Park and Recreation website, to our existing Greenway Master Plan, our Park Explorer app, an online app where you can search for our parks and facilities, or you can search for specific amenities, and then a link here to MEC Playbook, which is our new Park and Recreation Master Plan. So thank you so much for the opportunity to engage with you tonight, and I look forward to hearing from our other partners and supporters.
Bert, thank you so much, not only for that update, but for all of the incredible work that you and your colleagues are doing at Mecklenburg County Park and Rec to plan and build our parks, greenways, nature preserves, and the amenities within those. So I would now like to turn the presentation over to Beth Poovey, the president of Partners for Parks, who can share more about Partners for Parks work and why this is so important to them.
Thank you, Meg. Hello, Greenway friends. And thank you, Bert, for that very detailed and very informative presentation. I'm sure that's a lot to digest for everyone, and look forward to having that information. My name is Beth Poovey, and I am representing Partners for Parks. In case you do not know, Partners for Parks is an all-volunteer advocacy nonprofit organization, and we're focused on improving the quality of life in Mecklenburg County and the surrounding region by preserving, promoting, and enhancing parks, greenways, open spaces, play, and recreational opportunities. So we're really excited about this initiative to work with like-minded organizations to advocate for increased funding and better support to allow an amplification of the progress Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation has been able to make in creating better access to public open space for all of our residents. So having access to parks and greenways increases our community's health in so many ways. Those that have access by being able to safely and easily walk or bike to a park or a greenway are more likely to have better physical, emotional, and mental health, have safer, more vibrant neighborhoods, and feel a stronger connection to their community, and have more opportunities for economic and social mobility. We do not see parks and greenways as amenities, but rather as a critical component of our public infrastructure. While parks and greenways are both critical pieces, greenways have an added benefit of being long and linear, so they touch more people as well as more properties, and therefore can have the largest impact on the economic and social benefits more than any other type of open space. And that's mainly because they provide closer proximity to more people. So we know that there's challenges in acquiring land, as we heard, permitting and building greenways. And this can be really complex and a challenging process, and we commend the county staff for all they do. And they need more tools. They need more tools at their disposal so that we can meet the goals that we've all set before the community and build more miles of greenways in a faster time frame. I'm pleased to see that Commissioners Elaine Powell and Susan Rodriguez McDowell are on the call. Thank you for joining us and for your continued support for our greenways and our open space systems. So in closing, I'd like to invite all of you to attend our Partners for Parks special spring social on March 24th, right after our walk, a couple days after our walk. It's from 5:30 to 7:30 at the new Stevens Creek Nature Preserve. We'd love to see you there. If you'd like to, you can RSVP, sponsor or purchase tickets on our website, which is partnersforparks.org. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Beth, for that great summary of why parks and greenways are so critical to the health and economic mobility of our community. And we will definitely include a link to that event in the follow-up email to our attendees tomorrow. Now I would like to introduce Raul Galvan from the Carolina Thread Trail. And I also want to recognize that Raul was a summer intern with Sustain Charlotte just 2 years ago, and we are so proud of him. So I'll turn it over to Raul.
Thanks a lot, Meg. It's pretty crazy to be on this side of the organization and all the work that we're doing here now. Again, I'm Raul. I work for the Carolina Thread Trail. Share my screen here real quick. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of us before, but the Carolina Thread Trail is a regional network of trails, greenways, and blueways linking 15 counties in North and South Carolina. What you see here is the master plan for the completed trail network, which at over 1,600 miles is one of the biggest trail networks in the whole country. This grand vision was developed through the efforts of dozens of regional leaders who wanted something that helped create a regional identity. And since 2007, our nonprofit group has worked to make this vision a reality. To date, we have over 350 miles of trails on the ground and over 170 miles of blueways, which you can walk, bike, and kayak on right now. But I also want to stress that by no means does this mean that we do this work alone. We don't even build or own the majority of the trails. Instead, we cultivate and we rely on many partnerships between local governments, businesses, community groups, and land trusts, who are all needed to make sure these trails are the best they can be and most useful to their communities. We provide community support and engagement, trail building expertise, and funding for helping smaller municipalities achieve their part of the Thread Trail vision. And bringing it back down to Charlotte, and here Mecklenburg County is the focal point of the whole network. So the trails and greenways being built here by Meck's Park and Rec really are catalysts for the surrounding communities' trail networks. The success of greenways here and the proving of all the benefits that Beth just spoke about proves their value to other communities in the region and the importance of linking their systems to each other through Mecklenburg and bringing us all together. And one final quick, really exciting announcement is that we already have 350 miles of trail, and we recently set a goal to add another 200 miles of trail to the Thread Trail system over the next 5 years. A lot of that is going to be in Mecklenburg County, which is really exciting. And We also have announced a capital campaign, which has already raised over $11 million to help create those trails. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening at the Thread Trail. And for anyone who wants to be involved, you can come join us on one of our public programs that we host throughout the year all across the region. We also offer volunteering opportunities, and you can go on our website right now. We have a really nice and sophisticated and just snazzy online map that tells you whatever trail you want to see, what trails are near you. You can filter by walking, biking, running, kayaking, and a number of other filters. And yeah, I hope to see a bunch of you out on trails sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raul. It was really exciting to see that reminder that the work that we do here in Mecklenburg County definitely does not stop at the county lines, and that regional connectivity is so critical. So now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Paul Freestone. Paul is a member of the Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Commission, and he is extremely supportive of all of the work that is being done to accelerate the expansion of our parks and greenway system. So he is going to expand on a point that I shared earlier, which is the need to purchase land and not lose the opportunities to be able to buy land that is both available and affordable.
Thanks, Megan, and thank you to all the leaders and experts who preceded me this evening. As Megan mentioned, I'm a member of the Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Commission, speaking to you tonight as an individual and sharing a recent Park and Rec Commission resolution to hopefully a broader audience than it might otherwise reach. The County Park and Rec Commission is a volunteer commission, and we serve as an advisory body to the Board of County Commissioners on recreation activities and programs. We're tasked with serving as a liaison between the Board of County Commissioners and residents of the county. So forums like this are just incredibly powerful. We are also specifically tasked with advising the Board of County Commissioners on the acquisition and disposal of lands and properties related to all aspects of the county recreation program. So hopefully that is a great way to segue into discussion about our recently approved land acquisition resolution to communicate our recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. But before I dig into the key elements of the resolution, I want to emphasize that we do have opportunities for community members to participate in these processes on the Park and Rec Commission. We have a current opening if you're a resident of one of the southern towns, or if you know a resident of one of the southern towns of Mint Hill, Matthews, or Pineville. There is an opening at the Park and Rec Commission level now. We also have openings on our advisory councils. So there are current openings on the Greenways Advisory Council, and also Athletics, Senior Citizens, Cooperative Extension, and also some of our 3 regional advisory councils. So our follow-up communications will also include ways that if you are interested or know of somebody who is interested, to follow up and submit your application. So moving on to what you see in front of you, I'm going to try and stress the bullet points on the left so you don't have to try and squint to read the detail on the right. But remember that one of Bert Lynn's slides talked about obstacles to making faster progress. And so as a PRC organization, we're looking to try and address some of those obstacles. And the first one he listed was land acquisition. So our resolution, first and foremost, as I read off earlier, it established that we, as part of the bylaws establishing the PRC, have responsibility to advise on matters pertaining to land. And then we made what is a relatively big ask. You heard Bert mention that our current fiscal year funding for land acquisition for parks and greenways and open spaces is currently at $20 million, which is an increase from $6.6 million previously. We're asking to sustain that momentum and fund at least $35 million in the upcoming fiscal year. And we feel that like that is marginally front loaded, and that's purposeful to help with approaches like faster land banking to take advantage of current prices rather than possibly having to pay higher prices in the future. We also want to participate in a dialogue about potentially having a mechanism here in Mecklenburg County to provide access to a pool of land acquisition funding that would allow better year-over-year continuity of the process of land acquisition, and also for opportunistic purposes. And there are a couple different ways we think that might be possible, and we hope to help enable something like that in the future. Additionally, we'd like to experiment with a more publicly transparent land acquisition effort, at the very least promoting the fact that the county is interested in purchasing land for the purpose of parks, greenways, and open spaces, nature preserves. We think that's a positive thing to do because we've seen it in some other peer county organizations in the region, and it seems to have been successful for them. We think it would also help with motivated or land donors or sellers who might be inspired by the idea of their land going into some of these uses in the future. And we don't think that it would lead to a rash of speculation, because traditionally the county is going to pay an appraised value or market price on land that we're purchasing. A couple of the other elements kind of review the current set of conditions. As we mentioned earlier, there's ample funds we believe that could be allocated to this application. We have also established in at least two ways in the County Environmental Leadership Plan and the MEC Playbook Master Plan, a minimum goal of acreage of parkland per 1,000 residents. And the MEC Playbook does a nice job of translating that into a more specific and understandable goal of 400 acres per year to achieve the broader goal to compare to other peer groups. We haven't been achieving that rate. We've been doing great at acquiring land and had significant successes recently, but we're still not reaching that 400 acres per year. So we felt compelled that we wanted to ask for more resources to try and reach that goal. Another thing that's been touched on is scarcity. The total vacant land currently available in Mecklenburg County, and not all of parks and greenways would come from this pool of currently vacant land. But for rough assessment numbers, we're at about 50,000 acres of vacant land. And it is being acquired and developed at a rate of about 2,500 acres per year. So you can do some rough math, and definitely the takeaway here is that we're on the clock. And that scarcity contributes to the next point, that costs are conservatively averaging about $60,000 per acre and definitely increasing. This is based on recent county purchases. And it just highlights the fact that if we're going to set a goal that translates to 400 acres per year, and the minimum price or the minimum average price is about 60,000 per acre, then we're going to need at least 24 million in land acquisition funding per year. And like we said, we asked for 35 million, more than that, to help front load the effort going forward. The other thing we wanted to try and do is address potential bottlenecks, and there is a dedicated department of experts that pursues the land acquisition process for the county, and we've asked for additional staffing in that department. And then finally, we hope to generate public awareness and interest, as land acquisition is the kind of the leading enabler of all the things that Bert was talking about. So if we can acquire the land, then we can be better positioned to execute on all the other parts of the master plan. So in summary, we feel it's clear that there's a lot of funding that's in play right now at the federal, state, and local level. We recognize that decisions are being made or will soon be made that impact the next 5 to 10 years of investments in these amenities. And as Beth and others have said so eloquently, greenways provide just so many benefits to our residents, and they pay back as an investment at a documented return on investment rate that is in many cases $10 of benefits to $1 invested. But perhaps most importantly, a connected greenway network leads to economic mobility, which is an important priority for Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. So lastly, for my part, I'd like to acknowledge and recognize Commissioners Powell and Rodriguez McDowell, who have joined us this evening. I appreciate you joining us and your ongoing service, and also the partners in this initiative, Sustain Charlotte Partners for Parks and the Carolina Thread Trail. And that concludes my remarks tonight.
All right, thank you so much, Paul. I know that sometimes land acquisition is a topic that's difficult to wrap our heads around, but you did a great job of explaining why it's so critical to have that in place so that we can actually build those parks and greenways and get that network completed. So I hope that everyone is excited about the Growing Our Greenways initiative that we're launching this year. Before we get to our Q&A period, I just want to share a few ways that you can get involved. And again, all of this will be in your follow-up email tomorrow. So first of all, we are going to be working on getting that land acquisition resolution that Paul just shared, that the PRC has supported and approved, into a action alert form that you can easily use to let your Mecklenburg County commissioners know that you support it. So be on the lookout for an email from us next week, and please take action on that. Also consider serving on the Park and Rec Commission if you are from one of the southern Mecklenburg towns or one of those advisory councils that Paul mentioned. Also, we are going to be hosting 6 Growing Our Greenways walks and bike rides in 2020. These are going to be beginner friendly, family friendly, very casual pace. They'll be very educational and really fun. So we're excited to organize and launch those. And actually the first one is happening on March 19th. If you had previously registered for it, you may know that we had to reschedule it twice because of snowy conditions, but we're hoping by March 19th, the weather will be better. So we will be exploring a new section of the Cross Charlotte Trail, Carolina Thread Trail, Little Sugar Creek Greenway in Pineville. So it's going to be called Growing Our Greenways, Polk to Park Crossing, and that's going to be co-hosted by Sustain Charlotte, the Carolina Thread Trail, and Partners for Parks. So if you'd like to register for that, the registration is open at sustaincharlotte.org/events. And again, that'll be in your follow-up email tomorrow. So Eric Severl has been monitoring the Q&A box. So I'm going to turn it over to him to read some of those questions for our panelists to answer.
Thanks, Meg. Well, thanks to the fantastic job and work of Katie and Bert and others. They've actually answered all the questions that folks had. So and all of that will be going out tomorrow, as Meg said, too, so you'll be able to go over that. I did have one question, though, that wasn't answered that maybe anyone of the panelists could, answer. But some of the points that Paul just made about land acquisition and being expensive and scarce, is there any plans for maybe smaller urban parks that are really small to try to fit in and save and get more parks in places? And the same could be said for greenways. Would they be, more urban in nature, like the urban trails that the city has been working with the county to build in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so Eric, I can take the park section of that. The answer is yes. And we've got one that's under construction right now in the Camp Green neighborhood, right next door to the historic Dowd House. It's under an acre. It's a piece of property that we've had for some time, and we found the funding and went and activated that. So we're not necessarily looking for, 120 acre parks all around. Those are great to have. We have a number of those in our system, but we're looking to provide and increase access within, a 10 to 15-minute walk of where people live. And in order to do that, some of our parks are going to have to be a little bit smaller. One of the changes that we made in that playbook was we don't have a minimum park size. And so we could do something very, very small. But at the same time, we want to make sure that it's large enough to have some of the types of amenities that most people expect in a park: picnic shelters, playgrounds, fitness equipment, places to kind of gather, and some lawn space.
Thank you, Bert. I just had a comment I wanted to share with everybody from Elaine Powell. She says, thank you, and please note that 6.6 to $20 million was a huge funding increase to the BOCC. $20 million were earmarked for land acquisition this year in the Environmental Leadership Action Plan, and I appreciate your resolution and recommendations. The environmental stewardship leadership is one of our board's top priorities. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody didn't miss that in the chat. It was a little difficult for me because folks are chatting and my message was moving up on me there as I was reading it. But thank you for sharing that in your work with that funding, Elaine. I could read a couple of the questions already answered just so folks didn't miss them. And I think actually we just had one new question come in. It was, what happened to the Mecklenburg Greenways that Ed Barnhart was leading? I don't know if anybody, I think it looks like maybe Paul might be answering that question. If he wants to chime in quick, he can do so.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks for the question. We have definitely, from the very beginning of this initiative, been in touch with Ed Barnhart and the group responsible for Greenways for Mecklenburg. I think they're contemplating what their capacity is to be able to participate currently, but we're absolutely keeping them apprised of what we're thinking about and inviting them to events like this. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to partner with them. I can say that they certainly think along these lines, and we'd love to have them and other like-minded partners in this effort going forward.
Great, thank you for jumping in there and answering that. I have another question from Steve asking if businesses have been approached to sponsor any greenways, giving them naming rights to a greenway.
We yeah, I can go ahead and take that. From a staff perspective, we've had some partnerships that have included some funding from private companies and corporations. It's not something that we, at least in my time at Park and Recreation, have kind of actively pursued, but it is something that I think our residents in our Park and Recreation Commission have mentioned as a potential source for filling gaps and potentially adding more funding for future growth.
And Eric, if I could just pile on a little bit to that, it's something that
Sure.
The dialogue in forming this initiative has definitely touched upon. And we think about different dimensions of participation, maybe from corporate entities, especially those who are relocating to the area or expanding and are thinking about attracting talent. Since this is one of the top requested amenities, this could potentially help them be competitive. So that's part of the dialogue we're thinking about with some of these, and in some cases actively discussing with some of these corporate entities and with entities like the the Regional Visitors Authority. So it's part of the conversation, and I hope it could become a bigger part.
That's good to hear. We had a couple questions come in through the chat. I know we have a couple minutes left. If we could get through them. I guess first one relates to, most of the greenways aren't most of the greenways located in less buildable areas and then less expensive. So maybe Bert or Paul, you could chime in to maybe let folks know if that's true or not, because I think most land is, no matter where it's located, seems to be going pretty fast these days.
Yes, it is. But I think what's being referred to in the question is the fact that most of our greenway trails and most of our system is stream-based and located in the floodplain. And so there are restrictions as to what can and cannot occur there. Typically, the only thing that you find in floodplains right now are trees, some utilities. A lot of our sanitary sewer lines are in those locations in our greenway trails. So there are limits, and therefore, from a cost per acre standpoint or an easement value standpoint, it's typically lower than what you would find in upland property.
Bert, I think it might be good to talk about a little bit about the cost of construction in those types of areas are significantly more expensive than in others. So the cost, the balance.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's kind of why we included some of the infrastructure slides. In order to build a trail that doesn't get picked up and washed away or washed out or stays muddy and dry. That's why we use a lot of the materials and things that we use in the floodplain. We've done some soft surface trails in the past, most of which have been converted over to paved, because in those areas, we have a flood event come in, it picks up that trail material and it washes it and adds more sediment and pollution to our streams. So it's why we have selected the materials that we've selected in many instances within the floodplain there.
Great point, Beth, at bringing that in, because I guess any savings that may occur is kind of washed out with the extra cost of building the infrastructure. No pun intended there. We have time for one more question here. It was more about with all the development that is occurring, is there any way that we could have those developments help fund the greenways or parks? Or if not, mandate easements or donations or something of that nature to help alleviate those costs?
Yeah, so from a donation standpoint of land or easements, we've been successful for many years now in obtaining land and or easement for in some cases, current greenways or future greenways, through the rezoning process or through the subdivision review and land development process. We're starting to do more of that from a park perspective as well. And we're working with the city staff on the new UDO that's in draft form right now to potentially require some more teeth to what's required in terms of open space, so that we might be able to activate some of that open space as public land.
Okay. I think that's about all the time we have left for the questions. If there is anything that wasn't answered, we'll be able to, and all the other questions that were answered, we'll be able to include those with the materials tomorrow. And thank you, panelists, and for answering all those questions that were coming in pretty quick through the chat. Appreciate everybody, trying to inform and to spread the good word and work that is being done with our parks and our greenways.
Thank you, Eric, for moderating the Q&A. And I want to thank all of our speakers, Bert, Beth, Raul, and Paul, as well as all the people who are working behind the scenes at Mecklenburg County Park and Rec, Partners for Parks, and the Carolina Thread Trail, as well as all of the residents who volunteer on the Park and Rec Commission and all of the committees that advise Park and Rec. They're all doing amazing work, and we're so excited to be part of supporting that work and amplifying it this year. So thank you for attending our Growing Our Greenways launch tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our walks and bike rides on the Greenway this year, including that one on March 19th, which we'll share with you tomorrow in the follow-up email. So we will have a short survey in tomorrow's email, so we encourage you to take that to let us know what you thought of the event and what we can do to improve for next time. So I hope you have a great night, and we will see you at a future event. Good night.